Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Game Logic from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube, one of the co-hosts of the Enough to Keep Going weekly video games podcast on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube. This is episode number 421 for Sunday, the 25th of January, 2026. Here with me, as always, I have my stalwart partner in crime, Mr. Tao Master. How you doing, Tao?
Doing well. The dynamic duo is back again.
Yay, verily. Yay, verily. So, unfortunately, DBQ could not be with us tonight. It is not on account of the snowpocalypse, icepocalypse. He's just a little exhausted from doing some home renovations this weekend, so hopefully he will be able to join with us again next week at the regularly scheduled time. So tonight we're going to kick off with segment 1, our gamer experiences for the week, where we highlight the main gig that we have been playing. For me, I have been playing The Legend of Heroes Trails Beyond the Horizon on PC. So I'm going to bring up a little footage here. And so I'm about 21 hours into this game. I am aware of the Trails series, not so much. Well, I shouldn't say not so much. I've paid more attention to the Trails games coming. I haven't played them, but I've paid more attention to them than the Legends of Heroes, the parent franchise, if you will. Thanks so much, Hero Down Under and Henry Heck, for joining in the live stream and being in the chat. We appreciate you. And so this is the first one that I've actually gotten into and played and stuck with for any length of time. I can't remember exactly the time. It's The Legend of Heroes. I think it's Trails Before Daybreak Part 1. And then there's Trails Before Daybreak Part 2. Or Trails Through Daybreak. I can't remember exactly what the phraseology is, but I've spent a few hours in the first one, maybe 8 hours. Didn't stick with it. Just other games came along, and I put it in my backlog. But I have stuck with this one for a fair amount. It is, if you guys remember my discussion from last year about Clair Obscur Expedition 33 and how, like, how the systems went, and how initially it was kind of not necessarily that it was unintuitive, but it was like you had to immerse yourself in the world. So it was kind of going into kind of a Game of Thrones, Dune world where there's a lot of techno babble, or maybe in this case fantasy babble, about a lot of structures and systems and components in the gameplay and progression mechanics, especially, that kind of informed what you did on the battlefield. Man, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 has nothing on this game. It is 9 levels deep on the things that you really need to understand in order to progress your characters, and take advantage of all the things that you get rewarded, convert them into usable implements on the battlefield, and then to understand like what's going on right during combat. I think I have read through kind of my last chunk of stuff that I've needed to Google and figure out in order to kind of have my arms around this. And there's still probably tons of stuff that I haven't grasped and gotten a hold of. The first thing I want to talk about is pacing, and I've talked about this on a few other shows this week. If you are kind of, what I call the Action Jackson type of gamer, which I would say actually describes me as well, and you kind of need to be hopped up on adrenaline and like go and like constantly in combat, you're gonna struggle. Like, you would struggle with this game. This is probably not a game for you. There are very, very, very lengthy times of where you're just in dialogue, and it is not they're not dialogue choices, so you're not in conversations being presented things where you're getting options, right? And there's a little bit of a mechanic of a kind of light side, dark side moral choices for your character. You do get a trigraph that shows that you take actions that lend themselves toward chaos, gray, or I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called lawful. And those are descriptions of kind of the impact you were having on the land of Zemuria, the area that you're participating in. I don't really know that those things are like hugely impactful. My speed leader is kind of way out towards the gray side, a little bit towards lawful, and a very, very tiny bit towards chaotic. I had picked up a chaotic mission, which would have had me tracking and hunting down like an assassin that worked for organized crime in the area. But I broke off from that mission to take on a mission to progress the story. So the game is good about advising you that, hey, if you proceed with this mission, you will progress the main story, and therefore side missions and things that you've been presented so far will become unavailable. So I do like that. So you can kind of consciously and deliberately, make the choice to proceed and progress the story. There's an area in this game that you're eventually presented called the Grim Garden. And in Expedition 33, there was a small island that was an area that you could really grind to level up your characters. It's one that you had to discover by exploration. And then once you discovered it and kind of would figure out that, like, oh, now that I can like defeat these bosses, these mini bosses, then I see all the XP that I'm getting, and I now understand this is a grind area. And so it was a little subdued and a little hidden. This game, it's very overt. They give you this Grim Garden area. You can access this Grim Garden area. I mean, you have to find the portals, but you can access it from basically any sub area or town or district, right, or neighborhood in Edith that you're in, which is a like a city or a town within Zemuria. And so then when you go off and read a little bit online, you will see people telling you the game tells you that that's optional, but it's really not optional. Like, that is the way you need to grind and get the stuff to level up your characters. And so your characters have, like I said, it's really crazy. Your characters have 4 main traits. I can see them on the grid, but I probably don't like. So there's attack, there's defend, and then there's 2 other, I think, that are like your affinity towards magic. And I think something that would in Dungeons and Dragons would probably be like intelligence, which I think blends into your proficiency with your arts. When you're in combat, you kind of have 4 different things, as you see in the kind of the lower left-hand corner of the UI there. You have just regular attacks, which you will use when you run out of basically the equivalent of mana or craft points. You have crafts, which is that lower quadrant there that's labeled with RB. And as far as I can tell, those are your most... Hey, what's up, Ghost Racila? Thanks so much for coming through the chat. Those are your most potent attacks. And they, typically they will have some variances in terms of, like, some are you can only target one enemy, some are AoE, some are directional, but they can hit multiple enemies. Some will have kind of a wide swath, like a 90-degree arc in which you can capture enemies, but the range will be shorter, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have arts, which are the things over on the left-hand quadrant. Now, the game is constantly kind of shouting at you while you're in combat, and that may be because of some of the settings that I have, but it's constantly reminding you, hey, now would be a good time to boost. Now would be a good time to use an art. You have arts that target these enemies or these enemies are weak against. It seems like it's constantly mentioning art, but the reality is that, as far as I can tell, like, I don't want to use my arts. I want to use my crafts. In particular, because what arts do is they don't do as much damage, and they take like a phase of a turn to power up. So you activate them, you target the enemy, and then like it goes around the wheel again, right, for everybody to take their actions before yours actually goes off. Now, it's kind of spectacular if you have everybody charge an art and then those arts go off. One of the neat things in combat in here is that when you are in proximity to a character, like you see there when and I apologize for the audio listeners, but if you want, hopefully you can check out this video over on my channel, Rounding Off Infinity. When you're in proximity to another character, your character will attack, and then the other character will will do what I call a punishment attack, which is like an after attack right after you go. And sometimes, and I haven't figured it out entirely, but you also have support characters in your squad, so you can pick. So at any one time, you probably have 7 to 12 characters available total in your roster. You pick 4 to be your main squad. Then you will pick anywhere from 2 to 4, depending on how the story progresses, characters to put in the support slots. And then those are characters, as you see here, I have 4 characters in the support slots. Those are characters that I can swap in. So again, you have regular attacks, you have crafts, you have arts. You are also always carrying items, and I think you've seen that come up on the screen a few times here. And so you have, potions and things that that you can take to revive characters, restore HP, restore energy points, which are the things that you use to power arts. There are a few that you can use to restore craft points, which are the things you use to restore crafts. And then you have this S boost, which is another thing that you can use at any one point in command battles, and I'll come back to what a command battle here is in a minute. But you can use that to boost your crafts and then therefore do more damage. As all of this is going on, you also have buffs and debuffs. So Henry says, I finished Cold Steel 1 and didn't really figure out how to really make them hit properly. They just seemed like a waste, right? I think so. So arts, I think I see a tactical purpose for arts, and so as you use crafts, you do get to a point where you deplete your craft points. And then the way to recharge your craft points is to do regular attacks. And so you do hit points where you say, hey, depending on what the tactical situation is that's going on in the fight, do I want to do a regular attack to charge up my craft points, or something going on where I should use an art, because the arts will do more damage than a regular attack, but not as much damage as a craft. And so I tend to use them a little varying. Sometimes I have one character charge and do an art, while the other characters do regular attacks to get back their craft points. So like I said, another thing that's going on is there's constantly buffs and debuffs going on. The debuffs to me are the biggest pain because, so first of all, buffs and debuffs happen in conjunction with arts and crafts. Typically, any art or craft, but especially crafts that you launch, will typically have the regular attack, but will also have a buff associated with them, sometimes a debuff, sometimes I have seen instances where there are 2 buffs or 2 debuffs. The enemies, I think it's a critical thing to realize, and I didn't realize this when I first started playing the game. The enemies also have crafts and arts, and they also have basically the equivalent of one thing I haven't talked about, which are S breaks. You can also see that in the lower left-hand corner, and so you can, when you pull that right trigger, each character has an S break, which is essentially the equivalent of an alt, right, in kind of Destiny 2 terms. And those things are on rather extensive cooldowns. And so one thing, like the battle that I'm in now, is like a 25-minute battle. It's the biggest battle I've been in so far. This dude shows up with like 80,000 hit points. So S breaks are on a rather extensive timer. And so one of the things that maybe I could have done better with this battle is I could have swapped some characters in, because the S break cooldown is on a per character basis. So I could have brought some characters in to have them use their S breaks. And and then I don't know because I don't swap characters in and out a lot, and then I guess I could have swapped other characters back out. So again, so buffs and debuffs. The big thing strategically that I didn't realize when I first started playing this game, and I'm finally starting to catch on to, is in the dynamic of a battle, there's very much kind of a tug of war, right? A push pull and kind of a momentum to battle. And what can happen is you can get very far behind the 8 ball with debuffs. Like the enemies can, depending on the type of enemy, some enemies don't do a ton of damage, but will really jack you up with debuffs. And when you get hit with debuffs, they will cause things like they will cause all of your attacks to miss. They will cause you to have an inability to execute an attack. And so you have to spend the turn clearing that debuff. It took me a while to understand the iconography, but and so there's kind of a debuff all, this Curia Balm thing kind of debuffs everything. And so I was leaning on using that for every single battle, right? But now I understand the iconography, and I now see the items that I have in my supplies that will target a specific debuff. I wasn't equating them before, and a lot of times I had a debuff on, it had an icon, and then I'm like, well, I don't flip and know what debuffs that. So I think I've finally figured that out. So all of that I've described, that's just command battle, which is the turn-based mode. You can take on battles with other enemies because most of the battles are smaller enemies, right? Placed around the map. You can take on enemies in real time. And so that's called field battle. And so that has a slightly different dynamic in the way it goes down. And for both types of battle, you have a character screen that's outside this that sets the tactics for each character in your entire squad. Not just the 4 that you have on the field, but also the support characters. So the do loop of this game is incredibly extensive because you are, at some points, typically about every 2 hours, I kind of rearrange my squad. So you're arranging your squad, you're arranging your support people, you are setting their tactics that they're going to employ in command battles and field battles. When it's time to progress, you have this thing called an orbit chart, basically, which is your 4 main combat abilities, and then each of those 4 main combat abilities has anywhere from about it's usually 3 or 4. Most have 4, but you have 4 slots in there that are for these things called quartz. The way you obtain quartz is you buy quartz with this currency called sepith. Sepith are drops that you get during combat by fighting enemies. And you can also buy quartz, like at stores, you can go around and trade things in, right, to accumulate enough currency to buy quartz. Then you have regular currency, which is called mira. So mira you typically use to go buy items from stores like balms and things that you use for healing. And for debuff and to eliminate debuffs. And then you also have to manage this whole progression, because if you miss the progression, you will get into these fights and you will just get walloped because you haven't been leveling up. Because leveling up does not just happen. Leveling happens, but then you can level up, but raising your combat proficiency and combat abilities and the amount of damage you do, that doesn't happen automatically. It doesn't automatically equip new weapons when you get new weapon drops. So there's a rather extensive amount to digging into menus and constantly going through this do loop to kind of understand what you're doing. There's also achievements that you get as you go around. And so there's kind of again, like Destiny 2 achievements, defeat 50 Fallen or something like that. Those are things that you can turn in to get currency rewards too. But unless you dig into the menu to find where that is, you'll never do it. So I've hit 41 different achievements that have given me, quartz and other things. There are also loot drops that happen across the screen that give permanent increases. Like will raise your experience by 1,000 points, will raise your craft points permanently, like +5. Again, a thing that you'll have this stuff littered throughout your inventory and doing absolutely no good because you haven't dug into it. On top of that, you can craft in this game by cooking. And so if you can see on the screen right there, the LB and RB thing, there's items and cooking on the right. And so if you RB into that, that shows all of the things that you have cooked. And the things that you have cooked will also restore hit points, buff, raise, restore craft point in battle, restore craft points, debuffs, revives, things like that. The way you access cooking, right, to prepare all those things is in another part of the menu, right, in the UI, in this thing called the notebook. And so you go into the notebook, and buried in the notebook is a menu item to go access the recipes that you've discovered and cook those things so that you have them prepared when you go into battle. So needless to say, this is a game that has 20 to 30 different vectors of game mechanic and implementation and progression, and just all types of things that stack and at the end of the day determine whether or not you're going to be able to survive a fight. And a lot of them won't come to you intuitively. And so I've spent some time Googling, you become aware of them, and then I've had to go say, okay, well, how do you do a thing? Okay, so I saw that I can cook in the game, but like, how do I cook? Like, what is the purpose of it, and how do I do it? So it's been super interesting. Like I said, probably not a game for everyone unless you're, a person who gets really deep into systems, and figuring this stuff out. And then, like I said, from a pacing perspective, the prologue is 2 to 4 hours. It took me 4 hours because I sat there and I wanted to listen to all of the voice acting. And then, so I've gone through it in 3 different modes. I've sat there and like listened to the voice acting through different chapters. I have set it on auto, so it kind of auto advances, and then I've just hit the A button, right, to tab through all the conversations. But it's a JRPG. It is extensive in exposition. And if you sit there and listen to all of it, it will consume like the sheer amount of script and dialogue in this game that was programmed into it is flabbergasting, right? That amount of detail would be paid attention to kind of craft and weave like the world building and the story. I think the one other thing that I'll mention that's a key mechanic is this thing called connections. And so as you go around the world, you meet new characters. And I mean, it is a again, Game of Thrones, Dune level cast of characters, right? Where if you were reading this as a novel, it would be one of those novels that you're constantly flipping to the back where they have the list of the characters to remember like who the hell is this guy. And the world is just filled with like all of these organizations, right? Some of whom are aligned to nation states, some of whom are just their own guild, like off, like trying to maintain order for their own reason, not like really beholden to a nation state. There are religions, there are warrior clans. It's incredibly complex. I am not necessarily trying to keep up with all of that because, I would never finish the game. But you are introduced to these characters. I'm probably at a limitation because had I played all the things that came before, you would understand a lot of the stuff. I don't feel like I'm missing anything. Like I never get presented a character. I'm like, well, who the hell is that guy? Well, I mean, it's obvious that I don't know who they are, right? But the game's really good about kind of giving you a snippet about, this is a person that you met while working a case previously. And if you're not familiar with the whole trail setup, the setup is, this main squad here, Arc Ride Solutions, is like a foe, not a foe, but they call themselves a detective agency. But to me, if you've ever watched the show Leverage, with Nate Ford and his band of criminals, and he himself was like a previous like insurance agent that for some reason insurance agents I guess know how to run cons and defeat cons. and they go around the countryside like trying to set wrongs right. It's that kind of effect, right, of this crew. It's like they say that they're detectives, but like they're not like a regular, like people don't show up in their office hiring them for cases, right? They're a detective agency that like roves the world to find, the problems that needs to be solved. So, Tao, have you ever? And I know you're not a fan of turn-based, so my suspicion is this is nothing that you've ever kind of checked out.
Yes, yeah, and just hearing you talk, I'll probably never will. It seems super confusing. No, I mean, I can see some of the systems which you're talking about, just from other games I've played and stuff, especially like Pokemon, obviously, because there's a lot of buffs and debuffs that happen in that game as far as the fighting goes on that part. But I guess the confusing part would be like switching mindsets from, like you said, the turn-based to the real-time fighting, because I think you said it was a little bit different, right, as far as how the combat goes or flows.
Yeah, it's not as, they obviously can't give you all the options that you have in turn-based, and so you can access your crafts. I think it's either crafts or arts. You can access. I can't, all I know is the button that I hit to power them up, right? So they're so yeah, so when you're in real-time battle, you hold the Y button. For a long time I couldn't figure out why it was where, because in the menu it just says Y. It just says hit the Y button. So I was constantly going into these real-time battles hitting Y, and I'm like, why are the powers going off? And then like in the very low left-hand corner in very small type it says hold. So eventually I figured out to hold the Y button. But yeah, and then there's different, like there's this thing called awakenings, which as far as I can tell I think only work in real-time battle, but basically it's kind of like the real-time battle equivalent to me of of the S crafts or S whatever I call them, the S tier attacks, right? So they put you in this like super powerful mode that allows you to do a bunch of damage, and that in the S break, and so you do that in real time, but then turn based you do S break. So, but mainly what I use it for is time management, right? So typically what happens is you go into, and there are these things, a lot of these areas are essentially dungeons. Like you go in, you enter a door, there's a screen transition, the level loads, and you're kind of in that world, right, until you come out and then go into another level. While you were in there, you will typically get presented like new enemy types. So so I go into that world and you're presented a new enemy type, and I'm like, oh no, this dude looks dangerous, like what's going on here? So I will enter into a lot of those initial battles in command mode, in turn-based mode, until I figure out, like, okay, these types are dangerous, these types are not dangerous, some of these guys are fodder. And then once I figure that out, then then as I'm watching the clock on how much time it's taking me, then I'll get more and more aggressive about the level of enemies that I will take on in real time. And then in some of the ones, like in the Grim Garden, you will have specific objectives. It will say like you need to win 4 real time battles, right? That's sort of, that kind of forces you to go into that mode as well.
So like this battle, and I guess in general the turn-based battles, are they normally like a boss, mini boss, or is it could be like even just like a foot soldier type of person, or lower tiered enemy?
Yeah, it could be a foot soldier. They have this system called shards, and so when you go into battle, really at any point you can hit the X button and flip to turn-based, and so you can do that for the lowest level minion. I think boss battles kind of force you to go into turn-based, but there will be mini bosses. Like I said, this guy showed up with like 80,000 hit points. There were definitely other like mini bosses that I encountered that had like 30 something thousand hit points, and it progresses, right? It used to be when I was hitting bosses, the bosses had 35,000 hit points. Now I'm hitting mini bosses that have 35,000 hit points, right? As you are able to do more and more damage. So, but yeah, and those mini bosses with 35,000 hit points, I can engage them in real time now, right? If I wanted to. So yeah, you can go into turn based at any point, and it's, as far as I can tell, I think because I've done this, I think I've done this a few times. A few times I've gone into a battle in real time and I'm like, I'm just gonna push like and clean these guys up so I can get on to like the boss battle, and then I'll get into it and I'll take a huge wallop of damage and I'll be like, okay, yeah, I think I'll go turn based now. So it's neat that you have that flexibility.
You're playing on PC. Are you just using keyboard or mouse? Or are you playing with a controller?
I am playing with a controller, so
okay, that's what I thought. Because you're saying like RB and Y and A. I was like, I know it's turn based, so you're not going to use the normal type of controls if you're playing a keyboard. But
yeah, like Baldur's Gate, I absolutely played with mouse and keyboard, because that. So even though there's a super deep complexity of stuff, I would even say beyond Baldur's Gate 3, even though there's a lot of complexity of stuff here, it's all encapsulated within different menus, right? So at any one time, there's only like 5 of those things available, right? And then you need to punt or shift kind of into like a different menu. And when you're in that menu, again, there's not a ton of so like when I hit Y and I go into my item menu, yes, that's yet another like porpoise level down right into stuff. But at that point, I'm just scrolling right the item list and hitting A right to activate one. So it's not that complicated at any one moment in time. And so for that reason, I find that it's just easier to use a controller. All right, Tal. Any other questions on Trails Beyond the Horizon?
How about story? Like, is it like kind of confusing anime story, or is it pretty straightforward? Kind of like I think you said they're like detectives or something. So like, are they just following a murder case, or what's going on as far as the story goes?
It's so in terms of kind of normal kind of anime like JRPG stories, like I don't think it's that bad. Like I don't think it's as bad as like Ace Combat, where not only is like the dialogue cheesy and campy, but then some of the situations that are painted are like completely ridiculous. I will say the most ridiculous thing here is on 2 occasions, and I forget what this game is rated, but it did have something in the rating information that said like sexual situations or whatever. So the game is fairly benign and Disney-like right through all. I mean, minus the murdering and killing. But there's 2 points in the story where female characters you're interacting with just suddenly out of nowhere like come onto you, like in a very like aggressive, overt way. I mean, to the point where like the main male character Van is like, "Hey, whoa, time out! Like, what's going on?" So that to me was kind of a little like strange and might be like hyper cultural to like an Asian culture. But other than that, it's there's a bit of it that's like ridiculous kind of premise, but then within the premise, like once you get past that, it's kind of it's fine. The larger premise here is that the nation of Zemuria, the government is being very aggressive about investing in the space flight program that they say is essential. And so what these characters have assumed, because again, it's this weird thing where there's formal law enforcement, there's formal government, but there's just kind of like these roving bands of organizations. And again, if you've read Dune or read Game of Thrones, it's kind of like that, where it's not only nation states, but then it's subordinate organizations that have influence on the world. And so one of the suppositions is that, hey, with the space program going off, there's going to be money flowing like left and right, and everybody's going to try to be getting in on it. And so Van and his Arkwright Solutions team are kind of policing the world, on the lookout for people who are going to be on a grift to try and get in on the money train. And now a lot of it is again kind of in a Game of Thrones. Like if you watch Game of Thrones, there's never a benign conversation between characters, even who aren't adversaries. Like everybody's trying to milk everyone for every scrap of information that they can use, and this is very much like that. Like like all of your interactions are really around this notion of, hey, I'm gathering information, I'm gathering intelligence, I'll share with you what I know and you share with me what I know, right? That's what all the connections are around, they're really built around, who is Van going to share information with, and who's going to share information with Van. Now, again, you don't really have any provenance over that, right? In terms of story, like it's not like you're getting dialogue choices to say, divulge this information and not that information. You just kind of serially proceed through it, but that's kind of the background and the tapestry of the narrative. All right, Hal. Any other questions on Trails of Beyond the Horizon?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Let's go ahead and wrap that up, and let's go ahead and move on to segment 2 and start talking about the news from this week. First news story is over here on PC Games N by Edward Chester. AMD Ryzen 7 9850X3D release date, price, and specs. The AMD Ryzen 7 9850X3D is AMD's upcoming flagship gaming CPU, destined to knock the 9800X3D off the top spot in game benchmarks to become the new go-to choice for those building the ultimate gaming PC in 2026. While many details of the new chip have previously been detailed, it's only now the company has confirmed the 9850X3D release date and price, and thankfully the latter isn't as high as I expected. As our AMD Ryzen 7 9800X3D, this is really a lot of words and numerals to say for these parts. Review proved AMD has mastered the art of creating a CPU that doesn't need 20 plus cores to become the best gaming CPU you can buy, and that's a trend that will continue with the 9850X3D. Instead, its 3D V-Cache technology is the secret sauce to making these otherwise modest 8-core chips ultra-fast in games. Where the 9850X3D is set to eke ahead of the 9800X3D is thanks to a little extra clock speed, and inevitably, though, that does come with a slight increase in price. And so this part is going to come out at $499, which is just $20 higher than the 9800X3D launch MSRP. And pretty sure he gave the date, and it's supposed to be out at the end of this month, so January 29th, 2026. So of course you kind of always have to wait to see in this age whether or not this is a paper launch. But that is when the part is supposed to be out. It also has a pretty reasonable TDP at 120 watts. So something that is, well capable of being cooled and being powered without necessarily having to go way beyond the norm. So if you've got a 1000 watt PSU and you're running a 240 millimeter AIO, you should be okay. My own personal preference is 360. I tend not to run any less than 360 millimeter. But one of the reasons I pulled this is because, as I've been talking about on my own solo cast, Gaming Outside the Algorithm, we have a lot of like London bridges falling down. The PC market and DIY market has become absolutely untenable. These things are going to be ridiculously expensive. Nobody's going to be able to afford them. You should just buy a console. PC's on its way out. It's a lot of nonsense. And so one of the things that you do is you watch the market and you see what else is going on. And AMD is putting out this part at the end of January. Intel is proceeding with its Arrow Lake refresh, because another part of the ongoing dialogue is that RAM prices have gone through the roof. They're all crazy. And as a result, the price of every other component that you have to buy for a PC is going to go through the roof. And I'm like, really? Are we really saying power supplies are going to like what are we doing? So the fact that these parts are coming out and are like the fact that AMD is putting this part out at $499, like tells me, at least right now, and again, I'm not saying it's not going to change, but at least for right now, there's not an anticipation that this part is going to come out and nobody's going to be able to buy it. Right? And they're not charging $800 for this thing. One of the things I mentioned on the Basement Radio Arcade podcast earlier this week is, and I get it, like while we're all suffering with higher prices, a lot of times newer PC builders aren't aware of the past 30-year history of PC parts. These processors coming out that are enthusiast processors, this 9850X3D, 9800X3D, these parts didn't exist on a market before. If you go 10, 15 years, they were enthusiast processors. They were like a Core i9. And I can't remember what the was it the Athlon 64 maybe before there was Ryzen. But the point is that these enthusiast level processors were not $500 parts. These were $800, $1,000 parts, sometimes in excess of $1,000. And the motherboards that went with them were $300 or more motherboards. So the notion that you can buy an enthusiast level processor for $500 and pair it with a motherboard that's 150, right? When you look at some of like the non-premium motherboards, the era that we've lived through when AM4, again, as I've said, I onboarded to Ryzen in generation 1, and I used those same motherboards without having to upgrade for 3 generations. We've never seen that in the market. So I get that things have been bad, but we also need to get into context how historically unprecedentedly things were good for periods of time prior to this that had never been seen before in the PC DIY market. So I'm in my own solo cast, I've started this thing where I've kind of templated some builds, and I'm doing price tracking on that so we can see how those things unfold during the year. And I'm looking at like the alternatives that PC builders, PC power enthusiasts should be looking at, because sometimes you have to go with an alternative during times like these. And so we'll continue to talk about those, right, as these things come along. But for people who are looking to do a build, you may have to slum it on RAM. But right now there are some good parts coming down the pike in the CPU market. And I think even the Arrow Lake refresh, right, will be a viable option for people who are, AMD averse and won't buy anything but Intel. Tao, any thoughts or comments on that?
No, yeah. I mean, I think I was just kind of reading through the articles, like, oh, that's a pretty reasonable price as far as the price goes, and looking at the kind of the Intel equivalent, it's like pretty much right there, spot on with their prices. Maybe like I think it's like $50 maybe more than the Intel equivalent, but I mean that's that's nothing compared to what you're gonna, like you said, what you're gonna pay for memory and maybe some other components. But it's I was like pretty nice. I've never used any AMD machines myself, but I was kind of maybe looking to go that way once I do try to get into another machine, which it probably won't be for like another year or two, possibly, maybe more, depending on how everything is going. But I was thinking of maybe going that way also.
Yeah, I think that's I personally think that that's a good move. Now I will say, because I have to remember. So right now there's a thing going on with specifically the 9800X3D processor in the X870 motherboards, where we are seeing an increased number of sudden failures with that board, where that combination of parts runs fine and then all of a sudden just stops working. And so there's suspicion that it is voltage kind of problems like we saw with Raptor Lake, Meteor Lake, with the Core with the Core i7 13,000 and 14,000 parts. So I probably wouldn't go with that specific combination right now. And if I did, there are precautionary things for you to take, like to lower the stock voltage a little bit in the BIOS. And so I wouldn't lean forward in going with a 9850 X3D plus an X870 either right now. But there is the B850, there are the B850 boards right in the lower, again, non-gamer enthusiast boards that you can go with to pair that part with. So just, as I always say, keep your eyes out, do your research, be aware of what's going on in the market, and don't just take things for granted. Real Nate mentions, I mess with my voltage on my new build. Yep. Okay, let's go on to the next news story, which is obviously all the hullabaloo about Ubisoft this week. This news story over on IGN by Tom Phillips. Ubisoft cancels 6 projects, including Prince of Persia: Sands of Time remake, closes 2 studios, and confirms further layoffs in major company restructure. Ubisoft has announced a sweeping company restructure that will result in the cancellation of 6 games, including its Prince of Persia: Sands of Time remake, and a delay to a further 7 titles. 2 Ubisoft studios will be closed completely as a result of the changes, while others are subject to further layoffs. Of the half dozen games that have been fully scrapped, Ubisoft is only publicly naming one today. It's long-awaited Sands of Time remake that was rebooted once already. 3 of the canceled games were new IPs, while one was a mobile game. Ubisoft's core focus going forward, the company has said, will be on open world games and live services. And so what's really underpinning this is this orientation of the Ubisoft structure into 5 creative houses. And each of those creative houses kind of has a shtick. So you have Vantage Studios, which will... I'm not sure if it says it in this article. Maybe it says it somewhere.
Yeah, right where it says competition is here to stay, right underneath that, I think they start talking about the houses.
Yeah, but it seems like they don't describe Creative House 1. They go straight to... Oh, okay. Yeah, Vantage Studios will oversee Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Rainbow Six. Creative House 2 will be dedicated to shooters and will cover The Division, Ghost Recon, and Splinter Cell. Creative House 3 will focus on live experiences, which will be For Honor, The Crew, Riders Republic, Brawlhalla, and Skull and Bones. Creative House 4 will feature narrative-driven and fantasy-oriented series including Anno, Might and Magic, Rayman, Prince of Persia, and Beyond Good and Evil. Finally, Creative House 5 will center on family and casual gaming, including Just Dance, Uno, Hasbro, Idle, Miner, Tycoon, Catch App, Hungry Shark, and Invincible Guarding the Globe. Tal, what are your thoughts on this, Ben?
Yeah, I know me and DB were kind of going on a little bit back and forth on our Discord. It was just, I mean, I think the Prince of Persia was probably... That didn't surprise, I don't think, either of us or probably anyone, just because they haven't talked about that one in quite a long time. Probably since it was, well, I wouldn't say announced, but I guess after the reboot that they had to do on it. And after that, it kind of just went silent for like until now, basically, I think, as far as I remember. Yeah, and then them just kind of doing these houses now. I'll do that in quotes. I mean, I guess like it's just another like I guess kind of corpo speak. Just it's like, hey, now we got this dedicated stuff going on, and this is how we're gonna do it. So we'll see. I mean, going forward, maybe they can pull together. I know another thing too. After this announcement, I think it was the next day or maybe that same day. I know their stock took a big hit after this announcement. So hopefully, they can get everything turned around by doing all this rearranging and reorging stuff they have to do.
Yeah, I think the main thing that I've come across that has been particularly interesting to me, and this was my hope when we kind of heard they were reorging, but they didn't put out a lot of the details around it, is there was another story over on GameIndustry.biz that featured the SVP of studio operations, who I'm guessing means that she's a person who reports up to the chief operating officer, and she kind of oversees the operational aspect of the business, in terms of kind of what we call in project-oriented business, we sometimes refer to them as the line, meaning that they are the principal management section concerned with the execution of projects that make the company money, right? That earn us revenue, and then everyone else is arrayed in some type of support role or organizational structure to facilitate the line. So it sounds like that's kind of the role that she's in. And the key thing that I was looking for is like, look, if you're going to do these creative houses, and like there's a voice track that, well, we're going to give them complete creative and business control. I'm like, so what that should mean is that, whoever is the head of Creative House 3 should be able to look at their portfolio. And if they say, look, Brawlhalla is not doing what I need it to do. It's not profitable. It's a drain on my organization. There's not enough juice there worth the squeeze. I'm going to kill it. Then that head of Creative House 3 should be able to make that call and not have to do a bunch of mother may I with corporate. But that person should also be held accountable, right? And so if killing it means now there's $10 million in revenue not coming, right? So, I mean, this is the thing that I've talked about before. So this type of organization will have a requirement to do what's called AOP, or annual operating plan. And that will be for them at the beginning of each year, fiscal year, to pony up and say, this is what I expect my organization to bring in terms of revenue. And so again, if your AOP says you're going to make the company $30 million that year, right, and you make a decision that means you're $5 million short, then generally what happens, right, in that management regime is then you got to go looking for that $5 million, right? You got to go looking in the couch cushions. Where do I make that money up? Or you have a conversation that says, hey, look, my AOP, we did long-term planning, and I thought my AOP was going to be $30 million, but now that we're doing actual AOP for this fiscal year, I'm only going to be putting up 25 million because I'm going to kill Brawlhalla. But my intention will be to swing resources over in this other direction and do whatever, and whatever the story is. So that should be a conversation, because what we've heard at Ubisoft was a big part of the problem was that they were only greenlighting projects that were samey, right? They were, part of the reason Splinter Cell doesn't get made is because they're constantly, not greenlighting the pitches because it's not right in this template that Ubisoft will only approve. So hopefully this will give the studios the freedom that they need because they'll have management that's a lot closer at hand. But hopefully, those heads of those creative houses will have both freedom, but also will be held accountable. And you won't have, projects, in limbo for 7 years without anybody reporting up to corporate, like what the heck is going on, with them. So we'll see. I don't know, Tao, any other thoughts on that?
No, I guess the only other thing is I totally forgot they had the license, or they had Brawlhalla in the first place. So I don't know how much that speaks of everything. And some of those other ones, like the casual house, or the family kind of casual Great House 5. I've never heard of some of those. I don't know if like catch up. I don't know if that's just like an actual app or if it's like one of the like minor studios or maybe that does like mobile games or something. So like some of those I've never heard of.
Yeah, I think that's a mobile title. And like while there are titles in there that we haven't heard of, but we have heard of, dance or whatever the dance thing
Just
is.
Dance, yeah.
Yeah, Just Dance. We know that makes killer money. We know that that's the reason why there are still Nintendo Wii's, right, in senior living homes. Just because they still put out a version of Just Dance for the Nintendo Wii. So I think it's doing something for them financially. So it's just crazy.
That's their Madden, basically.
All right. Okay, let's move on to the next news story. I think, Tao, this is yours to brief.
Yeah, so we got some numbers from December of last year, along with a little bit of just kind of 2025 in general. U.S., and this is from Game Industry Biz from Vicky Blake. U.S. video game spend up 3% in December, fueled in part by 24% increase in subscription services. So U.S. consumer spending on video games reached $5.9 billion in December of 2025, an increase of 3% year over year. The revenue was partially fueled by the increase in subscription service spend, which rose 24% from December of 2024. According to new data from Squadra, while PC cloud and non-console VR content saw a modest 6% year-over-year rise, console and mobile content spend was flat. And then I just want to go here. Combined, there was a 1.4% uptick across the U.S. games market, with the Switch 2 finishing the year the best-selling hardware system by both units and dollar sales. And it remains the fastest-selling video game console in tracked history, which I don't know if they mean all consoles or just Nintendo consoles. That's a little kind of vague sentence there, but I took it as like all consoles, but I guess we'll have to see going forward.
Yeah, and I've dug into these numbers a little more, and it is for all consoles in tracked history. It means since they started keeping data on rate, right? There's kind of always been data that they've been able to get a hold of for total numbers of units sold. But when you talk about how quickly it is sold and the whole notion of a time aligned pace,
yeah, it's interesting some of the statistics they can pull out, like 4 months and from launch and all this other stuff. So sometimes they throw out there. Although overall spending on accessories fell 7% to $625 million in December, Nintendo's Pro Controller was the year's best-selling accessory. However, last month it fell behind the sales of PlayStation's Portable Midnight Black and the original PlayStation Portable, which ranked first and second, respectively, for dollar sales of that month. I got Metro 4 Prime was the only December game that cracked the top 20. It debuted at number 7, so it's good. It's jumped in the top 10 there. The biggest game of the month, of course, was Black Ops 7, which topped the charts in terms of both physical and digital sales. It's the 7th consecutive year a Call of Duty game was December's best-selling game. So, although I think overall, it was like number 5, for the year, if I remember. It's not in this chart, but I think it was one of the links that DB had put in there. I believe it was like number 4 or 5 or something for the year, maybe even a little bit lower.
It came in behind Battlefield 6, NBA 2K26, Borderlands 4.
Oh,
and it escapes me. It wasn't an exclusive title, but it was no, it wasn't FIFA. It was something that wasn't supposed to be there.
Oh, okay.
No, it was it was a game that was. I'll look it up. Yeah, it was a surprise.
Yeah, flip it to it. Oh, Battlefield 6 was number 1. The Battlefield 6, NBA 2K6, Borderlands 4, Monster Hunter Wilds was number 4, and then Black Ops was number 5 for the year.
Yeah, Monster Hunter Wilds I felt like shouldn't have been up there because you wouldn't have expected it to be up there because Capcom has spent a lot of airtime this year talking about how Monster Hunter Wilds is such a problem because in the post-launch sales tail, they've had months where it does not sell as many copies as Monster Hunter Worlds, right? And Monster Hunter Rise. So they have other versions, they have older versions of Monster Hunter that are theoretically cannibalizing sales of Monster Hunter Wilds. And I'm like, well, that's because Monster Hunter Wilds on PC doesn't perform well, right? When you throw, hardware at it, and you guys haven't fixed it yet. So
yeah. But
yeah, impressive that it still came in at number 4.
Yeah, I guess the thing that surprised me on the overall list from 2025 was Borderlands was number 3. I was like, oh, okay, because that had a lot of issues too at the beginning on the onset.
Despite Randy Pitchford saying that game could have been $80.
Yeah. Other than the press, but it's just like actually like gameplay and stuff too. I think I had some issues on the onset, but let's see. Just kind of going through the top 10. Only goes just through the top 10 for December. So that's December 1st through January 3rd. December 1st, 2025 to January 3rd, 2026. We got Black Ops number 1, NBA 2K26 number 2, Battlefield 6 number 3, Madden number 4, EA Sports FC, just soccer football, number 5, Pokemon Legends Z through A number 6, Metroid, as I mentioned before, number 7, Minecraft number 8, still jump back up at the top 10 there. Donkey Kong Bonanza is number 9, and then Ghost of Yotai number 10. And then kind of usual suspects in the next 11 to 20. College football, Grand Theft Auto, and stuff like that. So anything in this report on the list that surprised you or just wanted to comment on?
Lots of stuff that defeat a lot of kind of conventional bylines circulating amongst the gaming media this year, but I won't stand on my pulpit of how there's constantly a lot of noise about exclusives in AAA, and then I look at this list and I see exclusives in AAA. But whatever.
Three exclusives, 4 exclusives.
There are. I think there's 5. So we got Legends, Metroid Prime, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Ghost of Yotai. Actually, 6 Kirby 10. Air Raiders and Super Mario Galaxy in the top 20.
Oh, okay, top 20. Okay.
And then Marvel Spider-Man 2, right?
Yeah, Spider-Man.
As far as its initial launch. And then reinvigorated right by the port to PC. So the things here that are surprising or I won't necessarily say surprising, but stand out and to me are good about the variance, right, of content that's available. on the market. Like I said, the exclusives, the AAA stuff, but also like what was it I was going to say? Forza Horizon 5 continuing to perform well by virtue of its PlayStation 5 release. That is a game that I think only charted on the NPD charts once prior to its port to PlayStation 5. Red Dead Redemption 2 in at number 15. Just a really impressive tale on that game. Obviously, winning, I think it won Game of the Year that it came out. I think it was the battle, but I think that was the year that was the battle between that and God of War. Flight Simulator 2024, again, by virtue of its release on PlayStation 5, coming in at number 16. It was previously 114, right, before it showed up on PlayStation 5, so very impressive. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, again, there's a lot of loud insistence upon, AA and indie games. It is nice to see one of them actually chart on NPD, because my pushback on the AA and indies, I'm like, yes, absolutely. From a health of the business perspective, it's good when those things do well, but you guys who are making that insistence aren't tracking the data, and you're not acknowledging that those games don't perform commercially the same, equivalent, right, with the AAA games. But the other thing you don't talk about is the fact that 18,000 of those games come out every single year, and like 2 of them are commercially successful, right? Not 2 are commercially, 2 of them will chart, right, in NPD, but a very, very, very small percentage of them, in the hundreds out of the tens of thousands that come out, will really be commercially successful. So it's nice to see Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 kind of making its mark here.
Yeah, I always wondered why, and I know this has always been a thing since we've been going through the numbers like this, but like why Nintendo doesn't put their digital sales up there. Because I'm assuming that would maybe change the chart a little bit, like some things might move up. But yeah, for whatever reason, they never include their digital sales report. So
yeah. I mean, there's probably lots of reasons. I mean, part of it is because they have they have the one addressable, they have the one consumer base that is still heavily ensconced in physical. I think disproportionately greater than the other 2 consoles, and so maybe it's just a matter of like not wanting to upset the apple cart by showing how much they're doing on digital. Okay, let's go on and talk about the Xbox Developer Direct. Xbox. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just say, did you get a chance to actually like watch the whole thing, or did you just kind of catch the notes afterwards?
I was hoping you weren't going to ask me that question. I did. And look, you and DBQ should not take that as a signal that I'm going to be all in on heavily participating in like the war room for Summer Games Fest. I said this was the year I'm backing out of this and like just watching the individual trailers. But yes, yay verily, admittedly, when it came time to sit down and watch this, I was not able to just tell myself, just watch the Forza Horizon trailer, right? So yeah, just a quick intro here from the article on IGN written by Wesley Ian Poole. Microsoft kicked 2026 off with a new Xbox Developer Direct Showcase, which features some of the biggest games the company has coming out this year. So let me pause there. I don't agree that the Xbox Developer Direct Showcase is about showing the biggest games that the company has coming out this year. What the pattern that's being established is that Xbox Developer Direct Showcase is about the games that they are sure are going to ship this year. Because when you look at the showcase, the games that they put out, games that they put in the showcase do actually ship. I think there is and since 2023, if you remember, Starfield was not in the Developer Direct. And there was a bunch of chicanery about why it wasn't. And then 6 weeks after the Developer Direct, they said it was delayed. Forza Motorsport showed up after being committed to delivery in the 12-month plan from the showcase of 2022, mysteriously showed up with the year advertised as its shipping date. It just said 2023. Maybe it said fall 2023, but I think it just said 2023. So they didn't commit to a date. So what they have been doing with that thing is anything that they're not sure isn't going to make it, because notice State of Decay 3 was not in this developer direct, right? I think the pattern we should get accustomed to is that they're only going to put things in there that they know are going to make it. And what you should think about is when you see something not show up in that show, you should think that it's questionable whether or not that thing's going to ship that year. So okay, all right, we got fresh looks at Playground Games as Forza Horizon 6 and Fable, Game Freak's Beast of Reincarnation, and a surprise appearance from Double Fine in the form of Kiln. Below we have a roundup of everything announced, including all the trailers and videos from the showcase. Read on to find out all Microsoft had up its sleeve for the Developer Direct 2026. Tao, did you watch the showcase in its entirety?
I did not. This time we switched the roles here. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to. I started to, and then I got busy with something, so I couldn't finish it.
Okay. Did you watch any of the trailers?
Yeah, I did watch all the trailers. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think we'll be able to cover each of these then. So, your thoughts on Forza Horizon 6?
Yeah, I mean, it looks really nice, like as usual. I mean, I think the Forza series, just Horizon or the Motorsports is probably a showcase for the consoles, usually Xbox console, but in this case too, it's coming out. Is this coming out for PC? I don't know if they announced this one for anything else other than maybe PC.
Yeah, it's definitely coming to PC. What it's not doing is it's not going to PS5 day and date. The release date for it on PS5 was not announced. It was not firmly.
Actually, yeah, kind of surprised it's coming fairly soon. I'll say, and in quotes, it's in May of this year. So, which I was kind of shocked at that release date, because that's usually a fall release. Normally, I think most of the Horizon, whether it's I should say Forza, whether it's Horizon or Motorsports, it usually comes out later in the year. But so that was a kind of a big surprise. But yeah, I mean, it looks gorgeous. Just like I said, as usual, it looks like it's going to be a fun time. Yeah, I mean, if I jump back into Game Pass or anything this year, I'll definitely want to check that out.
Yeah, I think its release date is a matter of trying to peanut butter spread, right? Enough of the releases for Xbox in this year of their 25th anniversary, and you probably got Gears of War E-Day coming out late summer, because that's when the Gears of War remake was released last year, and then you've got Fable, which we're going to talk about, obviously releasing in the fall. You've got Campaign Evolved releasing in the fall. So I think there's definitely an effort to spread it out. May is a good time. It's that Memorial Day game. I'm not sure if it actually makes Memorial Day, because I think Memorial Day is a little earlier this year, but it hits there at the tail end of the year, which is of the school year, which I think is a good time and a good release target for it. For me, all of these games are a wait and see. Just, my confidence in Xbox is not anywhere near as bullish to a state where it would put me in a position where I'd be talking about pre-ordering anything. And even Forza Horizon, right? Because up until Forza Motorsport 2023, I had pre-ordered, almost every Forza Motorsport and Forza Horizon, and paid like the $100 like VIP thing, because I didn't want to be, bothered with being asked to buy car packs and stuff. I was like, fine, I'm going to buy it. So I'm going to buy them. Right. So I'll just give you the $100 up front. Right. And not be bothered. But where I am right now is I kind of want to see where this is going to land. This theoretically is being built on the revision of the Forza Tech engine that was used to power Forza 2023, Forza Motorsport. And that game is not particularly well received on Steam. Right. So I kind of want to see it. The other thing, and I hadn't even thought about this until tonight, but I'm going to say it, and I'm going to pound the table, and I'm going to make sure that everyone is very clear. I am not buying another Forza Motorsport or Forza Horizon that only has 2 modes on console. Forza Horizon 5 still only has 4K 30 and 4K 60 on console. And my personal belief is 5 years into this generation, with these consoles and the power they were advertised to have, and everybody being required to step up to HDMI 2.1 simply so that you have the interface and sync signals, right, that can be sent to move things at 4K 120. There should be other modes available, and Gran Turismo has them. And I'm not super wrapped around the axle that there be a 4K 120 mode, but great Scott, there should be a 1440 120 mode, right? There should be other modes available for what is the flagship racing game. Now, I also haven't checked into Forza Horizon, right, and Forza Motorsport in quite some time, but I know that the last time that I checked into them, into Forza Horizon 5, it only had 2 modes. So sometime within the last 12 months, right, those were the only 2 modes available on Xbox, 4K 30, 4K 60. And I think there should be more graphical options available right now. It's particularly now that you're only putting out 1 racing game versus 2. So that will be another reason why I will be giving this game a pass if it shows up in the same state, because I was kind of flabbergasted that those were the only 2 modes available, even at launch, right, on the Xbox Series X.
Yeah, I did like the customizable garages too. Just a little bit of customization as I like to do. So looks kind of cool.
Yeah, it should definitely be interesting for I wasn't particularly like crazy about that because like I can't remember if it was on this show, but like Assassin's Creed, I found that to be like one of the things that like I'm not like the whole like estate management stuff. Like no, I'm not like no. And I spend 50 plus hours right in a Forza Horizon game, but already as it is, I am insistent that be in racing. Right, I get to the point where I'm like, I'm not doing stunts. I'm not doing sights, lookout points or whatever. Like I want to be in races. Now the 2 aspects of this or one aspect that I didn't like, and maybe the half aspect because I don't know if it's actually in there or not, is I saw the Toge racing. That's I won't say that I hate Toge racing, but it's not one of my favorite things. I think they had it in Need for Speed Carbon, I want to say. I think. But of course, what anybody who watches this show should know that I do absolutely hate in a racing game is I hate being forced to do drifting events. I hate drifting events that like are not optional. And my big fear, because this is Japan, is that there are going to be mandatory drifting events that you have to do to progress the game. So I hope that's not in there. Be as vast as Forza Horizon is and all the different event types, I just hope drifting is something you can bypass. All right, Tal, what did you think about Beast of Reincarnation?
Yeah, Reincarnation. Yeah, I mean it's a action RPG, that third person. On
your time.
I forgot what is that? Like Bayonetta or Devil May Cry, those kind of games. You play as this female character in this post-apocalyptic Japan area. Yeah, I mean, it looked good. I thought it was going to be more. They were going to lean into more of kind of like a what do you call it? Like Demon Souls or that kind of game type. But it looks more kind of straightforward. Just action RPG. So it's not demony Souls. So yeah, I mean, it looks really good. You have this little kind of wolf plant creature that it's kind of like your sidekick. And it kind of showed off like skill trees for both your character and the sidekick character. So yeah, I mean, it looked really good. Looks like something maybe I'll look into. That's coming out for Xbox, PC, and PlayStation 5 also. So summer, I think they just said. I don't think they gave an exact date. I think that was just summer. Yeah, summer 2026. So it looks interesting though. You have sword, and of course you have a ranged weapon, which isn't a gun. It's a bow in this game. So I always like bows as weapons. So it looks pretty good.
Yeah, there were lots of comments about Fable and the performance that people were seeing in the demo, and concerns about whether or not that game was going to show up being performant. I actually felt like I'm more concerned about this game, and maybe it's because the closer proximity we are to the launch date. I just felt like this game, from a performance perspective and frame pacing perspective, to me didn't show well during the demo. And again, I don't take that as gospel because it's compressed YouTube video, right? And I did watch Actually, I didn't watch it live, so I watched it after. Because one of the things I always say is gamers do a lot of this thing of like they watch the live stream and then they have a lot of commentary about like how not well the game looked. And I'm like, you're watching compressed like 4K video like in real time, that hasn't even had enough time to upres right from the back end on YouTube. Like you're not actually seeing the real video right as it's canned at the developer studio. So um so I always say, like, if you've got a question about the game, like, go back and watch the actual 4K upres video. That will be available on YouTube right a couple hours after the thing live streams. But this game, I have a little bit of a worry from that perspective. So again, definitely a thing that I'm like, okay, this game needs to land. I need to see the Digital Foundry coverage of it, right, to talk about frame pacing and overall performance, right, and let some other gamers get into it and be the guinea pigs for whether or not the game performs well. And then while you start talking about Kiln and maybe while you're talking about Fable, I'm gonna go because I don't know if this is a UE5 game. I would suspect that it is, but I'm gonna go and double check. What were your thoughts on or was there anything else you wanted to mention on Beast of Reincarnation?
I was just gonna say, yeah, I think that same concern was brought up when they first showed this off back in last year, during their directs, or during their thing, the summer games, whatever. So it looks like it might still be a problem, or like I said, once again, it's all YouTube videos. But yeah, that was the only other comment on that one. And then Kiln, for me, this was probably like I've never been a huge Double Fine fan, so this is coming from Double Fine. It's an online multiplayer kind of party brawler game. So I was like, oh, okay. So like, it was fine for me. That was fine. Even though usually I like kind of like, party games and stuff like that, but it wasn't, it didn't do too much for me. It's coming out spring of 2026. So we'll have to see, how that lands. Probably, like I said, it was probably just the weakest one, at least for me. I know there's a huge, Double Fine fan group out there, fan base, so that's fine. I've played a few of their games like early on, but nothing really recent. Any other recent, and not to say they're bad or anything. I just just not for me. So
I'm in the same place. And I'm in the same place with Obsidian, right? And Obsidian is again one of my top 5 favorite studios of all time. But I'm not interested in Grounded, and I'm not interested in Pentiment. And so with Double Fine, I always love what Double Fine does. I always love the risk Double Fine takes. I always believe in kind of the spirituality of like the creative ethos, right, that is behind a Double Fine game. But I'm not interested in Kiln. I wasn't interested in Keeper. Psychonauts. I played a little bit of Psychonauts too. So but typically they don't typically show up with something that I'm going to be particularly interested in. But I appreciate the grind. Okay, Tao, what were your feelings on Fable?
Yeah, Fable. This was the one I was really looking forward to. We've seen, like I said, I think last week, we've seen bits of it here and there throughout since it's been announced. And really, the last trailer probably only had really a little snippet of gameplay, but they had a good bit of gameplay now in this one. Actually, sword fighting and using your magic and stuff like that. So it looks really good. I mean, to me, and this is not disparaging, what they're trying to do, but to me, it looks like the original Fable, just with better graphics. And that's like I said, that's not like disparaging them, but they have all these other they have these systems just like in the original ones, kind of like they didn't really say good and evil, but they said you can be good or you can kind of be a jerk to people, which is kind of weird. But they didn't really seem to play off the good and evil part like you would like in the original games. You can if you're doing bad stuff and doing stuff like that, like you would physically, you'd see the change in yourself, in your character that you created. And here it looks like it's maybe not so like evil, but you just kind of, like they mentioned, I think one of the examples is, you own a house, and then you can, rent it out or whatever, do what you want with it. And then you can evict people and, people will kind of, if you see that same person on the street, like, oh, you're a jerk, you're the one that evicted me and stuff like that. So it's more kind of that, not so much like you just killed a guy or anything like that. Now, they didn't obviously talk about everything that's going on with the game. So maybe that you can be an evil, person. Not that I ever was. Like I always picked the good path, anyways. But I just didn't see that kind of, comparison like they usually did. But overall, yeah, I really like what I saw. I thought it was, pretty cool. Like you can talk to like everybody, and like I guess you become the mayor or something of the town that you start off in, or wherever. So and you can talk to everybody, and make them do work for you, or like I said, you can rent out your houses and stuff like that, or your businesses or whatever, and hire them for businesses. So it looks like it's going to be pretty involved with that, at least that stuff. And then once again, the combat looked pretty good, looked pretty spot on. So I'm pretty excited for this title now that I've seen a little bit more of it. Or actually some of it from what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I don't know if this will be something that I play. Like again, with all these games, like there are games that definitely caught my interest, but like because of a lot of the stuff around Microsoft, Xbox, the studios, I'm just not out over my skis as bullish on any of these titles that has me saying like day one, I'm definitely going to be on this. Super interested in the premise of this. Not quite as much as I would be some other things, just because story setting wise, I didn't see anything in their story setting wise. Like I was all on board with Clear Obscure Expedition 33 because it hit a lot of like the drum beats, right, of stuff that I love, right. It was kind of it was modeled after kind of it was kind of like a period piece. It was kind of modeled upon like French history. And so a lot of the things like really appealed to me in their premise. This game in particular for the last 3 months, I've definitely, hit a stride where I'm like, okay, yes, I definitely am enjoying diving deeper on like the sci-fi stuff than the fantasy RPG setting. That's never appealed to me as much. And when it comes to novels, like I would always read, sci-fi stuff more so than fantasy. And so this, I didn't see anything in the premise of this that really goes beyond kind of the standard fantasy RPG template from a content perspective. So that backdrop and the tapestry, right, like just didn't like leap out at me. From a systems perspective, I loved like the idea of, there are 1,000 people in the town. They're all individual, there's a script behind them, kind of, driving who they are and what they do and how they respond to things. And so I kind of love that idea. I love the idea that you're gonna be introduced to a character and like 20 years later, right, you and that character are gonna have some interaction or relationship or whatever based on whatever's gone between you. I was actually very interested to see this, like the character creator. I think we all had the impression that you were going to be playing like the single protagonist that was shown before. So it's interesting that you're going to be able to generate a character who has your own parameters and stuff that you want to have. I was really excited to see this example of combat here. That and this guy I didn't realize it, but like this guy in the course of this combat switches between melee, magic, and ranged. And then the combat style that we're seeing here, where he's using a sword at one point and then using a two-handed warhammer, and applying like a different like fighting style, right, based on what weapon he's using. I thought was super interesting. It was also interesting to see, he's using different fighting styles again here. Before he was kind of using more of a fencing fighting style with wielding the weapon with one hand versus wielding like a two-handed weapon, right, where he's making very like very powerful like overhead and wide horizontal strokes with the weapon. But I was really also excited when I saw that kill animation before of him, putting the sword, right up to the person and then using kind of a raking thing to kind of finish them off. So a lot of the kill animations and the variants that I see here is super interesting. Here he's using a ranged weapon, which has an impact, has one type of impact on the other enemies, right? Promptly takes them out, and then he sees with the other enemy who's approaching him, who's apparently much stronger, whatever armor that character has on, the bullets are doing nothing, right? So he has to switch to a different tactic, and he winds up, firing at the legs, right, to take out the person's stance. So lots of these things are interesting in the combat variation, and so I'll be interested to see how it lands. Hope it lands well, and hope it's performant. On PC especially.
Yeah, I also like when he's in combat, at least with the humanoid characters, and maybe it's like that chicken thing, whatever he's fighting, it didn't seem to be as much, but there's like an impact, like when he was hitting them, like they'd get knocked back and they stumble and stuff. So it's not just like you hit them and they just, don't do anything or just kind of knock back like a regular animation. It's actually, they're stumbling and, trying to right themselves because they're off balance. So that's pretty cool. I like when games do that. That's not just like a standard hit or anything like that. So that looks pretty cool.
Anything else that you want to talk about with regards to the Direct, Tal?
No, I think that's it overall. I mean, it looks solid. Like all the games, like I said, other than Killing for me, look pretty good. So I'll definitely be interested in these ones coming forward. And this one is just fall of 2026 for Fable. So anyway, exact date, but we do have to remember though, we got the big meatball. GTA 6 is out in November, so I don't know if they're going to try to get in before that or late December or something. So we'll have to see if it actually does make a fall release.
Yeah, I feel it will, and I feel we'll get the definitive release date at their Summer Game Fest show, Summer Showcase in June. The only other thing I'll say about this, so obviously I really love the developer direct format. I've talked about that a lot. It's akin to kind of the Ubisoft format. I really like hearing from the developers and not just seeing a trailer, but also then not seeing a bunch of executives like blabbing at me about like the business model and all this stuff. I was super impressed from a PR and a marketing perspective that they started the show, they put Game Pass up at the outset, they put Play Anywhere up at the outset, and they didn't mention it for the rest of the show. Right? They did do the typical shtick where like every 10 minutes they're telling us this is a Game Pass game, this is a Play Anywhere game. And what I especially love, and this has not been the case, right? Because when the woman went up to accept the award for South of Midnight, like she's barely able to hold herself together and get through her acceptance speech. But at the end, she mentions when South of Midnight is coming to PlayStation 5, which I'm absolutely certain was not something she did of her own initiative, but was something she was told to do by corporate, right? So I love the fact that they did not lean on these developers and creative directors and tell them to stump for Game Pass and stump for Play Anywhere, right, in every single one of their trailer segments. All right, Tal. Let's go ahead and wrap up with segment 3 with what you've been playing this week.
Yeah, so real quick, I obviously didn't have anything for the anything new on my main GX stories because I've been still pretty much knee deep or neck deep actually in Cyberpunk 2077. Mostly playing on Nintendo Switch. Just like last week, I'm kind of just bouncing between the the side quests and kind of the main story quests that you could do. But I did jump on my Xbox Series X because I remembered I actually had bought it back in the day on Xbox One, not the Series. So, and it was I just wanted to kind of do a comparison graphically. And I mean, I have to say, like, they did a really good job on the Nintendo Switch too. Because the resolution's obviously better. I think probably like the biggest thing is probably the lighting too is a lot better on the Xbox version, Xbox Series X. And I think they did do an upgrade to the Series X when that had come out, or not too long after that had come out for Cyberpunk also. So, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of, and obviously like with the cars and some of the pedestrians and stuff, like there's a little bit more because obviously that system's not going to handle like a whole big huge crowd. It still has a good amount of people when you're kind of in the more kind of congested areas and like marketplaces and stuff like that. But obviously Series X and probably PC, I'm sure, and PS5, they have tons more. But I mean, I'm pretty impressed of what they did for the Switch 2 and just how it runs and stuff. So very just hats off to to Project Red because they did a great job on there. And then the other game I've still been playing is Dragon Ball Kengenshin. I think that's how you say it. Squadra, which is that kind of a mobile-like game with using the Dragon Ball IP. So played a little bit in PC, and then these last few days I've actually downloaded on my Nintendo Switch, Switch 2, I should say, and I've been playing it on there. It actually came out on the original Switch, so and it runs fine. Obviously, I'm on the Switch 2, so it's the top-down perspective, so it's nothing graphically huge other than like all the explosions and stuff from the characters. But the one nice thing was that you log in with your Bandai Namco excuse me, ID, and I was able to pull all my PC progress down to my Switch 2, so I didn't have to start over like you have to do on some of the games on the Switch 2. So that was nice. So been kind of plugging away at that, just kind of playing. There's a standard mode that you play, and then now I think I have a couple other modes that I just unlocked because I hit whatever level, I think level 10 or so, maybe even 11 now that I just unlocked. So been plugging away at that. So playing a few games. That's a nice thing about this game too, is play a few games here and there, and then you kind of just move on to something else. So, or at least that's how I do it, because it just kind of gets to me sometimes when you're playing these games, especially these last few days I haven't been playing with my friends, so I was just playing with randoms. So I was just like, I'll just play a few games and kind of bounce out. But yeah, having a good time still with that one.
Okay, very cool. One of the things that I mentioned I was going to look up during the previous segment was Beast of Reincarnation. That is a UE5 game that Game Freak is working on. Okay, last thing to cover is upcoming releases this week. Significant releases this week include High Guard coming to PS5, Xbox Series, and PC tomorrow, actually. I know there's been a lot of doubting and hating out in the gaming community about whether or not that game was actually going to release, but supposedly it's coming out tomorrow. Dispatch coming to the Switch and the Switch 2 this week on January 28th. Cairn coming to the PS5 and PC on January 29th. Grid Legends also coming to the Switch 2 on January 29th. Code Vein 2 launches on PlayStation 5, Xbox, and PC on January 30th, and that's Xbox Series. So I don't think, well, except for this last game, I don't think any of the previous games are launching on PS4 or Xbox One. This game, however, is Front Mission 3 Remake, is coming to PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and PC, also on January 30th. Any of those games tickling your fancy, Tao, and any thoughts of picking any of those up this week?
I probably won't pick up anything this week, but definitely Dispatch is on my radar for the Switch 2. I'll probably pick that up eventually, probably when it goes like on a sale or something. Yeah, I definitely want to try that game out. Pretty good things. Yeah, you can pick up Legends, or
I had originally wanted to, but I am going to continue powering through The Legend of Heroes Trails Beyond the Horizon. Right now I'm projecting that I'll be wrapping that game up in the first week of February. So probably not catching any of these this week. I will take a look at reviews for Grid Legends and see how it lands, and think about whether or not I pick it up once I'm done with Trails Beyond the Horizon.
Is that already on other systems right now, or consoles and PC? Grid Legends?
Grid Legends, yes. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I think they're getting an update too this week, I think. But the main thing is this coming to Switch 2.
Nice.
Okay, that is going to do it for us next week. Looks like I did not. Oh no, I did. Next week, Towmaster will be the standing host, while myself and DBQ are co-hosts for next week's episode. Again, we'll be here next week at 8 p.m. Standard Time on the 1st or the 2nd of February, or maybe January 31st. I don't know. I'll take a look at a calendar.
It'll be first. Yeah, it'll be first.
Okay,
1st of February.
Cool. Yeah, well, theoretically, that's when I'm projecting to be almost done with Beyond Horizon. So we will see if I maintain pace. I know I'm pushing through. I want to get to about 40 hours in and then take a break. So I may not have it wrapped up by the time of the show next week. So we'll have to see. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there. Play the games that you like. Come here to talk to us about the games that you love. Once again, my name has been Game Logic from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube. One of the co-hosts of the Enough to Keep Going weekly video games podcast on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube. If you do swing by to watch the archive version of this on that channel, please feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And here with me tonight, I've had Towmaster99. Until next time, good night, good luck, and good gaming. That's going to do it for us. We're out of here. Oh, and before we're out, I do want to say, I meant to mention, thanks a lot for everybody who swung through the live stream in the chat. So Enate, Hero Down Under, Ghostface Killer. My apologies if I missed anyone who also came through, but we appreciate you guys showing up here every week. Talk to you next week.